Hey everybody, TacticAngel here, back on the PlayStation 4, playing some World of Warships Legends. Today we're going to be revisiting a ship I've actually already talked about, but since my first review I've started adding in some history about the actual ships, and I'd like to think that I'm at least a little bit better in terms of analysis and the comparison pieces in my videos. Hopefully you agree. In any case, I have left an index down below in case you want to skip forward to certain portions of the video. And what ship are we going to be talking about today, though? It is this, the USS Marblehead. So the Marblehead was an Omaha-class light cruiser constructed for the United States Navy, and she was the third ship, and at this point, the last ship to be named after Marblehead, Massachusetts, in American service history. She was laid down in August 1920, launched in October 1923, and was commissioned into service in September 1924. As an Omaha-class cruiser, she was designed to be a scout cruiser with as much speed as possible so she could participate in, if not actually lead, destroyer divisions. The Marblehead started her career with a shakedown cruise in the English Channel. After that, she would spend most of her time before the war projecting American power and influence generally to countries with less sophisticated or even less existent navies than the United States, including Nicaragua and then in China. She would bounce back and forth between the Atlantic and the Pacific before the outbreak of World War II. On December 8th, she was on the other side of the international date line when the Japanese Navy attacked Pearl Harbor as part of Task Force 5. The standing orders given to TF5 was, specifically, Japanese started hostilities, govern yourself accordingly. Task Force 5 met up with elements of the Royal Netherlands Navy and the Royal Australian Navy to help guard Allied interests against further advances by the Japanese Army and Navy, which had made not only a devastating attack against the American fleet at Pearl, but it also made several territorial advances around the same time. On February 4th, 1942, the Marblehead sailed from Bunda Roads and headed towards the Japanese convoy, which had been spotted around the Makassar Straits. Before they could intercept, though, the convoy came under attack by Japanese bombers. Fighting off the first three waves and even downing a plane, the fourth attack run by the Japanese landed 2 direct hits to the cruiser and a third bomb narrowly missing, but exploding underwater and causing serious flooding near the bow. In addition to the flooding, though, the attack jammed her rudder 9 degrees to the left. The wounded ship was able to limp back to port, but her draft had increased due to the amount of water she'd taken on from 14 feet to 30 feet at the bow and 22 feet at the stern. Unable to enter port, she effected some temporary repairs and then headed for India, which again could not fully service the ship. Following that, she sailed for South Africa and eventually limped all the way back to New York, having taken the long way home, so to speak. The Marblehead would be repaired and would serve out the rest of World War II in a variety of capacities, including participating in shore bombardment for Operation Anvil, which was the invasion of southern France, before she, like all the other Omaha-class ships, was quickly decommissioned after the war, by that time being fairly obsolete in the eyes of the US Navy. Then ultimately she was sold for scrap in 1946. As far as how the ship performs in game, let me say this: the Omaha is among the best ships in the game at Tier 4, at least in my opinion, so it shouldn't surprise you that the Marblehead is also a pretty good ship too. I would, however, highly suggest that you play up to the Omaha and consider how much you like the ship, because not everyone does, and then envision her functionally without torpedoes. If you're okay with this proposition, then the Marblehead is a pretty good ship for you. If you feel like you'd miss the torpedoes a lot, then the Marblehead's probably going to feel pretty bad. I do expect that the Omaha and Marblehead are going to be fairly popular in Tier 4 ranked battles, and what a total coincidence that it's being sold the week before the first Tier 4 ranked battle season. As far as its appearance in game, I'm not able to really point to a time in history when the Marblehead was ever armed this way, or even painted this way. Nevertheless, the camo is more or less believable from a historic point of view, even if the Omahas tended to have dazzle patterns instead of this more organic stripe pattern. For comparison purposes, we'll be talking about the Marblehead next to the Omaha. So this is first a look at my commander. I am obviously using the same commander in my Omaha as I am in this Marblehead, so all of the stats are modified by Norman Scott, as you see here. So the first thing we always start with is survivability. The survivability of these ships is roughly the same. The Marblehead does have an extra 200 hit points, and you can tell me just as soon as that matters. It has the same armor scheme in terms of its protection, ranging from 6 to 76 millimeters. It is very possible to get citadeled through the bow of this ship, but that said, it's even easier to get citadeled if you're going to give people broadside. For artillery, we're going to be looking at the same layout between the two ships. In fact, every stat that you see here is exactly the same as on the Omaha if you have the same commander. And it really is this section of the stats that really make the Omaha and Marblehead stand out. You have a lot of guns, you have a pretty good fire chance, and they have decent range. This ship, along with the Omaha, is one of those ships that a lot of people go to when they're looking to score a large number of citadels in one game. For torpedoes, we're looking at a real big difference between these two ships. The Omaha is armed with 4x3 533mm torpedoes, reloading at 66 seconds. They are doing around 1200 damage, are detectable at 1 kilometer, and have a range of 5.5 kilometers with a 56 knot speed. Now, all of those numbers pretty much look higher than what you're looking at here. That includes the reload time, which is 28 seconds longer than you see on the Marblehead. That said, having half as many torpedoes that do almost half of the damage for an increased torpedo range of 8.2 kilometers is probably not a trade-off that many people would take, considering the 49 knot top speed of these torpedoes. Now, I haven't looked at every torpedo in the game right now, but my guess is that these are among the slowest available to any ship. So, in terms of torpedoes, if you're looking at the Marblehead, you should be really relying on the guns. Now, having torpedoes is a little bit nice because you can judge whether or not ships are moving forward or backwards and get a vague understanding of about how fast they're going. But other than that, I wouldn't consider using these too terribly often. For AA defense, you fall down here as well. Thankfully, this isn't really a thing that matters all that much, so the fact that your AA rating is exactly half of what a traditional Omaha has is not a real big deal. For maneuverability, both the Omaha and Marblehead are exactly the same in terms of their maneuverability. They are actually very fast cruisers for their tier, and they also turn very nicely when at top speed. As we move into concealment, both of these ships are again exactly the same. You're looking at a 10.6 kilometer detectability range with this setup, and then of course it gets lower inside of smoke when firing in smoke, and your guaranteed detectability is again 2 kilometers. We are going to briefly touch on the one other advantage that the Marblehead has, and that is that it has a third spotter plane. Now, ordinarily, an Omaha only gets 2 spotter planes. They have exactly the same stats. The Marblehead just gets 1 extra use. I don't really know how often this is going to come up as a major advantage because, of course, the spotter plane has a very long reload time, and I don't know what to tell you. It's an advantage for the Marblehead. Now, if we were to look at this in terms of the overall advantages and disadvantages, you can kind of see here that the Marblehead is a worse ship than a traditional Omaha, but considering that the major strength of the Omaha is its guns, and you have exactly the same gun complement here, it is still a ship that's a lot of fun to play. Alright, so here we go into an actual battle. We are obviously going to be on our archipelago. There is the beautiful Marblehead, and here we go. I am going to start moving out to the west, and as I do that, that's just because I don't really love getting flanked by enemy destroyers. I will mention that, like most of my games, this is not the best game I've ever played in a Marblehead. It's not meant to give you an unrealistic expectation of this ship. I do like this ship a lot, and I really am not trying to sell it to you. You really should make your decision about whether or not you want to buy the Marblehead based on if you like the Omaha, and the Omaha without torpedoes specifically. So there you can see we have 2 hydroacoustic search consumables and 3 spotter planes. God knows where they put the 3rd spotter plane, but whatever. Here we go. We see a New York out there. We haven't shot at the New York because we're kind of hoping not to draw its attention while we are vulnerable. The Marblehead, just like the Omaha, is prone to being citadeled pretty easily, taking just a ton of damage all at once. So we're trying to get this island between us. Naturally, that means we get like really behind this island before we start shooting at people. So we start actually shooting the island. Kind of a hallmark of my World of Boats experience. In any case, we launched the first one of our 3 spotter planes. As we're doing that, we are still spotted, which tells me that there's some pesky destroyer out there somewhere. So I should be at least a little bit concerned about being torpedoed potentially. He might be in front of me. He might be to my right. It's really hard to say. We open fire again on the island. We hit it. And, of course, the boat also in the distance just a little bit. That Omaha is playing a little bit too aggressive, but he is giving me the opportunity to address one of the key weaknesses of this ship without actually experiencing that weakness, and that is just the ridiculous amount of damage you can take in a short period of time if you turn broadside to somebody. Since our armor characteristics are basically exactly the same, I would expect the same thing would have happened to me if he was basically using AP rather than shooting torpedoes at me. So, I don't know. Maybe that's a strange sort of blessing when it comes to the torpedoes in this ship. If you're not key on using them, then you won't be distracted from what this ship is really good at, which is, of course, shooting lots of guns, whether that's with the AP versus cruisers, or the HE versus pretty much any other target. Now, at this point, we're kind of backed into a corner with this New York, and I need to run away. And since this is not a terribly interesting thing to look at, we're just gonna, maybe speed this up just a little bit so that we can get back into the actual gameplay in just a second. Now, I will say, the reason why I'm running away here is obviously the same reason that I was mentioning the whole Omaha incident. I can take just a ton of damage, and I want to get to a range where the New York cannot reliably hit me. Now we're kind of coming upon that. I am spotted, but I'm far enough away that I feel like I can actively maneuver a little bit, and I'm not all that likely to be hit by more than 1 or 2 shots. Now, 1 shot can take me down to half life, but at this range, I feel a lot better about harassing battleships with HE. So we start putting some shells out there on that New York. There you see we catch another fire, even though it is already on fire. That's pretty nice. That'll get us a little bit more chip damage. We're up to a little bit over 28,000, and he's burning nice and good there with at least 3 fires. and more shots still incoming. And the damage that you see there on the HE is actually pretty respectable. You know, some of these salvos are doing 1500 damage. Obviously I have Scott, he's the accuracy commander. You got a little bit of extra fun in there for, you know, setting ships on fire a little bit more easily. And that certainly helped with this particular ship, as we end up with the kill right there. Now, there is an enemy Acasta in front of us. We're going to stay on HE. Obviously, there you can see, among ships that can deal with destroyers, the Omaha is certainly one of them, and the Marblehead is no exception to that. We have both our hydroacoustic and our second spotter plane active right now, so we can pretty easily spot all of the torpedoes that are likely to be coming our way. Continue to put some nice shells down on that Acasta in front of me. Of course, we've got this Matsuki to my left. I feel like this isn't going to be much of a challenge, except for my complete inability to aim sometimes. Our second salvo is quite a bit better, and I feel like I'm, you know, reasonably dialed in at this point. We land well more than 2100 damage against him, and I don't think he's too interested in fighting us at this point. So he's going to run away. We are reasonably fast. As you see, we're topping 30 knots, even with some maneuvering. And now we're coming down to the last couple of ships in the game. So one of the things that I thought was, I mean, maybe particularly good about the timing, but also particularly like, sort of exploitative, I guess. I'm not really sure how to describe it. Is this ship is going to be pretty good in a situation where it knows it's going to be top tier. That includes ranked battles, and I'm sure that's exactly why it is being released around this time. That said, you know, the Marblehead, in terms of tier 4 ships, you don't have a lot of choices if you're looking for premium tier 4 and you'd like to play a cruiser. Certainly, there are not a lot of better ships in the game at tier 4 in the cruiser space than the Omaha. You could maybe make an argument for the Königsberg, but that's even more delicate than this particular ship. Also, I'm not sure it's a better fire starter, because as you see, we started plenty of fires here. We come to the end of the game, we run away with the victory. There you see us on the top of the charts. Nothing too special there, but just a solid game in a cruiser. Here are your economics. Overall impressions, I think I've said it several times. I like this ship. I like it a lot better with the semi-historic, if not historic camo. Just because I can't find it in my measly research doesn't mean it didn't happen. But in any case, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys on the next one.